Morning. I didn't mean to be giving you a concert. I was waiting for the hand to go up to 12. I know. Thank heavens. Thank you, Reverend Mary, for cutting me off. Give him the hook. I invite you to rise in body and our spirit, and let's sing together out of the Teal hymn book, hymn number 1074, Turn the World Around. If you're joining us online, you can find the lyrics posted in the chat. They'll also be up here. We come from the fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain, go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is life, so is life. Oh, so is life, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is life. So is life. Oh, so is life. So is life. Water makes a river, river wash the mountain, river make the sunlight turn the world around. Bodies of the river, body is the mountain, spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the spirit, truly of the spirit, only can the spirit turn the world around. Oh, so is life, so is life. 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 Good morning. Please have a seat.
Good morning. Welcome to the Olympia UU congregation for the second of two services today. Yes, I hope all of you took full advantage of your extra time this morning. From now on, there will both be a 9 o'clock on-site service and a 10:45 on-site and online service each Sunday. So, our community envisions an interconnected world that is loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ann Colbury. I prefer she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of the worship arts team. I'm an older woman with dark hair and glasses, wearing a dark blue sweater and a brighter scarf. Leading worship today is our Reverend Mary Geer, Troy Fisher, our music director, and our storyteller, Tess Schulze. You are welcome here just as you are. Whatever beliefs sustain you, whomever you love, however you understand and express your identity, and in all the ways you are still becoming the person you will be. Here are a few notes about today's service. We are streaming live and on Zoom and YouTube, and the service is being recorded. If you're in the sanctuary, you can read the mostly accurate subtitles and hymn lyrics on this screen, and if you're online, on the bottom of your Zoom screen. We are a multi-generational community and welcome all ages in the sanctuary. Over here are soft chairs and activities for busy hands so everyone can be comfortable. We also offer nursery care and a story program for children just down the hall in the classroom wing. We'd like to thank everyone who helped make worship happen this morning. Much thought has gone into the decision to offer 2 services, and so many more volunteers have stepped up to welcome, usher, bring and serve food, run the tech table, and coordinate changes. Thanks to all who are contributing in so many ways, and to all of you who are making changes to your morning routine. After the service, everyone will have the chance to discuss reflection questions offered by Reverend Mary. Please stay for coffee and fellowship in the Commons. Those online, we invite you to attend a virtual chat in a breakout room. At 12:15 today, please return to the main Zoom room or here to the sanctuary, or you can join online for a Faith in Action Forum, Classism 101, offered by Reverend Mary, Ann Hundley, and Tim Ransom. Because the forum will be streamed on Zoom, those attending either service may choose to join without being on site by using the Zoom link. In support of our upcoming stewardship drive, OUUC is hosting Gather, Grow, and Guide sessions throughout January. During these hour-and-a-half sessions, we will share stories, watch a brief video prepared by Reverend Mary on the 5 ways to grow, and finally, we will ask you, dear congregation, for guidance on how we can achieve the goals we set for 2025. Let's come together in members' homes to connect, gather our power as we prepare for 2025. There will be snacks. There are several sessions to choose from, including an online option tomorrow evening. If you're online, look in the chat for details. Sign up today as spots are filling. You can go to ouuc.org or see the announcement in the weekly update. Did I mention there will be snacks? Next weekend, please join us for OUUC Days of Service in honor of MLK Junior Day. There are several ways to participate, including making signs Thursday night, attending the People's March on Saturday, bringing food for our food drive on Sunday, and more. We're working on a day of service at Quixote Village on Monday. More details soon. Please check the announcements or contact Reverend Sarah with questions. There's always so much happening at OUUC. Check out the Tuesday electronic update or the website for the most current information. Now let's open our hearts and minds as we prepare for worship. It is good to be together. This morning, we join Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition, with words of Reverend Wayne Arneson. If you are online and have a chalice or candle, please join me as we light them together. May our hearts and minds be opened this hour to the power and the insight that weave together the scattered threads of our experience and help us remember the wholeness of which we are a part.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Mary, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm an older white woman with brown and silver hair, wearing glasses and a brown sweater dress, and the beautiful stole that you gifted to me when I returned from sabbatical last fall. Our opening words this morning are offered by Michelle LaGrave. We gather together. We arrive as individuals, as couples, as families, as neighbors, as friends. We got here by walking, by biking, by riding, by driving, by connecting. We bring with us our joys and our sorrows, our laughter and our tears, our worries and our fears, our questions and our beliefs, our ethics and our values. Some of us arrived early this morning, or joined us 10 minutes ago, or encountered obstacles on their way, or will arrive just in time for the sermon, or will sign on later this week or even next month. We are sitting in pews, leaning on walkers or canes, stretching in the aisles, settling into wheelchairs, and relaxing in recliners. We, members, friends, and visitors alike, come from many paths to join together as one congregation to lift up our highest ideals. We have gathered. Come, let us worship together.
Let's sing an opening song together. I invite you to rise in body and our spirit. This is a piece that we have done before. It's called Here Together by David Glasgow. And he's also written verses. We've only ever sung the refrain. And so I'll sing a couple of the verses in between us singing refrains. And if you get the knack of the verse, you're welcome to join along. Otherwise, just join on the refrain. There is a place I love to call my own. There is a peace I only feel in sharing it with you and letting you share too. It makes the welcome real. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. Singing alone, it lets my heart shine through, but there is music in your soul that joins its voice with mine. It's only there we find the kind of peace we know is true. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. Let's tag it out. And we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. Thank you for singing.
Good morning. My name is Tess, and I live in poverty. I wonder what each of you thought of when I said that word, poverty. There are no right or wrong answers. The images of poverty are so much a part of our society, and our thoughts are often influenced by what we experienced the moment before. Bias is inevitable when we focus on a demographic and not the real people behind the statistics. I was born with multiple hereditary exostoses, a bone disorder. After many years of working, my doctor told me he would rather I took disability than keep doing more surgeries to repair the damage to my joints. As I started my journey into poverty, I vowed that I would not let poverty defeat my dignity and sense of self. That vow has often been challenged. As I have navigated life, I have also navigated the many assumptions made about those who are poor. the widely held beliefs that the poor lie and manipulate into getting more than we deserve, colors many of our daily interactions. These perceptions can result in needs being unmet, low self-esteem, and withdrawal from social interactions. To help you visualize some of the ways this plays out, I will give you a few examples from my life. Several years ago, I injured my leg and my GP sent me to an orthopedist. I was shocked when the first thing he said when I entered the room was that he wouldn't write anything in my file that would help me get more money from Social Security. I stared at him in disbelief before informing him that I had proven my disability case 10 years before, and there was nothing he could write in my file that would change that. He grew angry, and I left without even an exam. His assumptions were made based on boxes checked on a form, and there was nothing I could do to convince him that all I wanted was treatment for my leg. People with greater means may feel guilty when denying the poor resources. This internal conflict can result in some painful interactions. When my cat had an obstruction and couldn't eat or drink, I took him to the veterinary hospital. I was short of the funds required up front for Perseus to be seen by the veterinary. I believed the receptionist wanted to help my cat, but she was tasked with turning me away. To ease the way, she accused me of lying and manipulating her and blamed me for not bringing enough money to save my cat. Once I was demonized, it was then easier for her to show me the door. I felt humiliated and ashamed for the sin of not having enough money. But don't worry, Perseus is okay. Throughout history, keeping up with the Joneses has been a way to distinguish the classes. Currently, the Inner City Transit Center displays a sign that declares, "Everyone's going digital." And every time I see that sign, I think, I guess I'm nobody. In this tech-driven society, you have to be connected to submit your medical questionnaire before even being seen by a doctor. Even family life is affected by the tech craze. At Thanksgiving, I complained to my sister that no one in the family contacted me for family reunions, and she said, "If you're not on Facebook, you're not in the family." These social hurdles leave me feeling cut out of the world and forgotten. When I shared some of these stories with some of my friends in preparation for today, I was amazed at how they related to those stories and how many of their stories they shared with me. They are not isolated incidents, but examples of what happens all too frequently in our lives. Thank you.
Each Sunday, we engage in the spiritual practices of generosity and gratitude by joining together in service to our community and to something greater than ourselves. We each have the power to share, and when we combine our gifts to create an offering, we are able to do more than any one of us can alone. We also express gratitude for the gifts that life has given us, for the network of relationships in which we live, and for the presence of this community. Our offering does two things. It helps support the ongoing work of this congregation, which is also supported by our regular pledges. The offering also supports an organization that aligns with our UU values and serves our greater community. Our Share the Plate organization for January and February is New Horizon Communities. Panza, doing business now as New Horizons Communities, provides permanent supportive housing for people experiencing homelessness. They create and manage tiny home villages that foster community, encourage personal growth, and promote access to the care and services residents need. Founded in 2007 with OUUC leadership to support a tent camp for homeless adults hosted by local churches, Panza created Quixote Village, a permanent supportive community for the homeless in Olympia. Now, as New Horizons Communities, this nonprofit has built 2 additional villages, especially for veterans, in other communities. Village staff work to ensure that every resident gets the care and services they need to achieve their goals. May the offering to support their life-changing work now be generously given, as it will be gratefully received.
Tried to fit, we tried to bend, fix all our broken places, wishing we could mend. So we stand here with these scars, naked, and we trace our fingers lightly over yours. Where are our better angels, beautiful and wise? We pledge our first allegiance to the love that's in our eyes, in our eyes. After midnight, rage and fire's light, some are shaking with despair, so many dead and silent. Are we brave enough? Are we strong enough to listen and to care? Where are our better angels, beautiful and wise? Pledge our first allegiance to the love that's in our eyes, in our eyes. So much history, can we change it? For we know that time is running like a river through our hands. Tell the stories that must be told. Make us whole, so we will rise, dream, and breathe.
Thank you so much for your generosity and all the ways you share your many gifts. Excuse me. This morning we do as humans have done since we've existed. We gather in times of worry and anxiety, and in times of celebration and joy. We come into our community bringing all that is in our hearts and on our minds. Let's open our hearts to the complexity of life as we place stones in the water of community. We'll hear a drum beat. Let's allow its resonance to enter into our bodies. It's the heartbeat of life, the heartbeat of community. So right now, let's just take a deep breath together, in and out. Feel the air as it enters and leaves your body. Feel the earth beneath us. Feel the warmth of connection. May we open our collective hearts to all the beings who are impacted by the fires in Southern California. Many of us have people we care about who are reacting and adapting in all the ways needed to be and stay safe, caring for others as they are able. Some people are caring for the many animals who have also been displaced. May they know that they are not alone and that they are loved. Taylor Hutchinson asks that we send our love and care to their friend Megan, who lives and writes in New York. Megan is going through a rough patch that has been hard on her mental and physical health. Taylor asks that we wrap our collective arms around Megan as she moves through this pothole on her road to the peace, security, love, safety, and community that she and everyone deserves. May this be so. And last, Helen Henry shares that she was diagnosed last May with bile duct cancer of the liver. After 6 months of chemotherapy, she had successful surgery in December and is now considered cancer-free. Yay, absolutely. She is so grateful for the medical care she received and is looking forward to 2025. Helen, may your new year be all that you imagine. So now let's open our circle wide. For those on Zoom today, I invite you to share from your heart by entering in the chat. Those of us in the sanctuary will be able to see your sharing on the screen, and it's shared with me and the pastoral care team. For those on site today, I invite you to come forward if there's something that you'd like to bring into community. You may place a stone in the water as you hold your sharing in your heart. Let's hear the heartbeat of our community as we open our hearts to all those who share today. We place one more stone in the water for all that has been shared online, shared from the heart. And one last stone in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken. We hold together all that has been shared. May you feel yourself witnessed. May you know yourself beloved. Let's take a moment now to harmonize our bodies and our breath. Please be in whatever way is comfortable for you to hum. So in a moment, I'm just going to start humming, and I invite you to join me. Just pick a note and hum. Change your note or stay on the same or harmonize, whatever you like. Just hum and enjoy the vibrations that we will create together. I invite you to place your hand on your chest or on your belly so that you can feel the vibrations as they go through your body. We'll hum for a bit, and when we're done, we'll be in silence for just a bit.
I invite you to remain seated and let's sing together hymn number 34 with Bravest Fire.
Today's first reading is from John Peter Berger, an English art critic, novelist, painter, and author, winner of the 1972 Booker Prize. It is an excerpt from his book of essays called Keeping a Rendezvous. The poverty of our century is unlike that of any other. It is not, as poverty was before, the result of natural scarcity, but a set of priorities imposed upon the rest of the world by the rich. Consequently, the modern poor are not pitied, but written off as trash. The 20th century consumer economy has produced the first culture for which a beggar is a reminder of nothing.
When I was a new social worker in the mid-1990s, I applied for a job in the Community Service Office in Vancouver, Washington. Community Service Office, or CSO, is a fancy name for what I and many knew as the Welfare Office. The hiring manager asked me to show up at the office at 8 a.m. on December 1st. Now, in those days, on the 1st of the month, people who received benefits like food stamps and financial aid went to the office to pick up their benefits or untangle them if there were problems. Now, early that December in the CSO, it was chaos. A cavernous waiting room packed with people, many of them children, and noisy. It was so noisy. People were disappointed, angry, desperate. It was holiday time, and there was no joy. So I stood in a corner watching people. There weren't enough chairs, recipients and caseworkers, and I was both fascinated and appalled at this place and system that I'd been invited into. I noticed my reaction to what was around me and the assumptions I made about the people, as well as what I was seeing and hearing. Now, I came to the CSO that day with my own class identity and background. I was a middle-class, educated white woman. I come from a blue-collar background. Both of my grandfathers worked in the foundries in Michigan, and they both died young of cancers likely caused by their exposure to industrial toxins. Both of my grandmothers worked, not only for the income to help their families, but for the social connection. My parents were young when they married and had 3 children, so my brothers and I watched our parents work and go to college as we grew up. My parents were the first in their families to ever go to college, striving for a place in white-collar middle class. And while I experienced a mostly middle class and upper middle class for most of my life, there is something that I feel deep in my bones that remembers the experience of my ancestors, the fear of not enough, the fear of not being worthy, the fear of not belonging. Now, on that December morning in the CSO, after about 45 minutes of waiting in that big, noisy room, the hiring manager called me back into their office, a blessedly quiet space. And after we sat down, they said that they'd intentionally asked me to come when the office opened on the 1st of the month. They planned to have me wait for a good long time. And if I was still there when they came out, I was hired. If I didn't flee, I was in. And that was my introduction to working in the government systems and to working with people who live in poverty. And that was work that I would do for another 20 plus years. I had a long time to explore my own class, to address my assumptions and biases about people and poverty, and to learn about the very inadequate systems that we have that are supposed to help. I was working in the CSO during the years when we implemented welfare reform. The new national legislation passed under President Bill Clinton that increased the work requirements and mandated drug testing for anyone who received government benefits. At the very same time in our nation, we had just experienced a failure of many savings and loans institutions during the 1980s. And after very big government bailouts to the banks, Congress was passing legislation to address those failures and to prevent future problems. I recall thinking at that time that there wouldn't be one single bank officer who would be required to take a drug test in order to get government money. The difference of who is worthy of government help without question and who is not is a result of classism, prejudice against or for people because of their class. Class is defined as where a person is in relationship to others regarding wealth, education, status, and power. In the US, we have a hierarchical system where those with wealth and education have status and power, and those without wealth don't. They're considered less than and often disposable. Classism is when class prejudice and misuse of power causes harm. It is classism to act as if people with money are smart, competent, motivated, and trustworthy, and that people without money are ignorant, incompetent, lazy, and can't be trusted. And we live in a capitalist society where what generates wealth, the economic term is the means of production, is owned by individuals and companies and corporations. And in theory, a capitalist system uses competition in a free market in order to set prices and figure out how goods are to be distributed. That's different than a planned or controlled economy like socialism or communism, where prices and distribution are determined by a central body. Now, there are benefits to capitalism, like freedom of choice and opportunity for economic growth, just as there are benefits in any economic system. And there are also drawbacks and challenges to capitalism, just as there are in every economic system, including the possibility of monopolies, economic recession, and economic inequality. And while I have very much simplified the economic theory of capitalism and the workings of our economy, my point is that every system, every economic system has pluses and minuses, and that we know that the concentration of wealth and the existence of poverty are challenges that are to be expected in the economic system that we have chosen. It's what we do with those challenges that is the question for us as a nation. And this is a question that gets ever more pressing every day. Between 1981, when Ronald Reagan was elected president, and 2021, when Joe Biden was elected president, $50 trillion moved from the bottom 90% of Americans to the top 1%. A trillion has 12 zeros. And for the past 5 years, the Pew Research Center has been reporting that the gap between income, that is what people earn, and the gap between what people accumulate, that's wealth, for the richest and the poorest households is widening at an ever-increasing rate. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer at a rate that keeps accelerating. The economic impact of the pandemic made the income and wealth gaps even wider and even faster. We saw white-collar workers work from home, able to keep jobs and maintain income, accumulate wealth, while low-wage workers lost their jobs. Even those low-wage workers who were deemed essential workers faced dangerous working conditions that put themselves and their families at risk for COVID. This disparity impacts people of color and indigenous people most acutely because their economic opportunities are further impaired by systemic racism, just as opportunities for their ancestors were limited, making the possibility of inherited wealth difficult or even impossible. And it was this intersection of race and class that led the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King to begin the very first Poor People's Campaign in 1967. King preached that poverty is one of the 3 forms of violence that he called the triple evils. The other 2 are racism and militarism. These 3 evils are the barriers that we must overcome in order to truly create beloved community. And what makes poverty violence is not only the impact on people, for that is violent indeed, but the fact that there is enough. There is enough for everyone to have what is needed for life. That we do not choose to create and support systems that ensure the equitable distribution of enough to everyone is a violence to all people and to the bonds that connect us.
Reading is excerpts adapted from A Theology of Liberation by Gustavo Gutierrez Merino Diaz, who was a Peruvian philosopher, Catholic theologian, and Dominican priest. He was one of the founders of liberation theology in Latin America. In liberation theology, the way to a rational understanding of God is found through a broader and more challenging course of action, following Jesus. The theory of liberation theology is inspired by the gospel and is put into practice by solidarity for liberation. Essential to appreciating liberation theology is understanding 3 meanings of the term poverty. Real poverty as an evil, that is, something that God does not want. Spiritual poverty in the sense of a lack of readiness to do God's will, and lack of solidarity with the poor and an absence of protest against the conditions under which they suffer.
Last Sunday, I shared that one of the ways to understand Unitarian Universalism is that we are a faith tradition based on 2 heresies. I said that the heresy of Unitarianism is that there is one God instead of the Trinity. Unitarians recognized a prophetic message of Jesus while seeing him as human. Unitarians pushed against the Christian orthodoxy of the Trinity. The heresy of universalism is that everyone is worthy of God's love and salvation. Universalists pushed against the Calvinist doctrine that only some are chosen by God to be saved. Only some are considered worthy. Now, Calvinism is named after John Calvin, the 16th century theologian, who came up with what we now know as the Protestant work ethic. Calvin believed that at the very beginning of time, God chose only a few people who were destined to be saved. So really there was nothing we could do in this life to change our destiny chosen by God. Calvin preached a reverence for work, saying that idleness is a sin, and claiming that work would be a balm for any fear and worry that we might have about our status in this life and in the afterlife. Calvinists believed that a person would know if they were among the chosen, God's chosen, if they were successful in this life. All wealth comes from God, and God smiles on the elect. Calvin said that money too must work, not sitting idle or accumulating. It must work for the benefit of others. Calvinists tended to live an austere life of work and frugality, offering charity to the poor. Now, Calvinism was brought to North America by European colonizers, the Puritans, and for a long time it was the dominant religious expression in the United States, especially in Congregational, Presbyterian, and Episcopal denominations. Calvinist theology influenced the founding fathers of the United States, who drew on Calvin's insights to design our institutions of government. Remember that originally only white male landowners were able to vote. Now, it's not hard to see how Calvinism can be used to support classism, where the wealthy are to be revered as the chosen, worthy of God's love, and that the poor are to be reviled as not chosen and unworthy. This classist interpretation of Calvinism shows up in the structures of our nation, communities, and organizations, and I believe that most people don't even know the religious roots of these messages. For example, we have a new government forming whose leadership is primarily made up of millionaires and billionaires. And in the media, I hear and see implicit and explicit messages that they are worthy of leadership because of their wealth, which suggests that they are smart, effective, motivated, and trustworthy. There's no mention of religion behind these messages that we're getting, but it's there, so much a part of our culture that we don't even see it anymore. Now, the history of universalism in the United States begins with John Murray, the father of American Universalism. Murray was an Irish Calvinist minister who increasingly found himself disenchanted with his denomination's theology. He encountered the Universalist teachings of James Riley in London in the 1760s. And when Murray's wife and son died, he emigrated to the US in 1770, headed for New York, but went aground in New Jersey. Murray was invited to preach in a small church there and offered a universalist message, which was very well received. Murray went on to preach up and down the East Coast, preaching against the Calvinist orthodoxy of the time, claiming that everyone was destined for heaven, not just those with wealth, that everyone is worthy. Now, the American Unitarians and Universalists, two separate denominations until 1961, began talking about merging in the mid-19th century. It took almost 100 years of negotiation for that consolidation to happen. We're a stubborn people. There were denominational differences in how clergy were trained and ordained, and there were differences in how congregations operated and were in relationship with each other and were in relationship with their denominational leaders. Those were important details that had to be discussed and figured out. But the big difference between the two denominations was class. Unitarians tended to be professionals and educated, and Unitarian clergy at that time were all Harvard educated. They were middle to upper class. Universalists tended to be tradespeople, farmers and fishermen, with trained clergy, but not at elite universities. They were middle to lower class. And just notice the hierarchy of our language and labels. The Unitarians vastly outnumbered the Universalists, so the Universalists were afraid that their culture would be swallowed up by the Unitarians. And to a large extent, that's kind of what happened. The stereotypic Unitarian Universalist is educated and middle class. Especially, this is true in the West, where Unitarian fellowships, like the one here in Olympia, established in 1952, these fellowships were intentionally started to attract middle-class, educated people, often in towns where there was a university or a college. Unitarian Universalists have been struggling with class differences for a very long time. And yet, there is still more diversity in our congregations that we acknowledge. It's a part of our history, and it's a part of our present day now. Tess shared her story earlier. Thank you, Tess. And she is not alone among OUUC members who struggle with poverty and economic inequality and classism. Not long ago, I met with a longtime OUUC member who said that they had something to confess to me. Now, that happens even though I'm not a priest. It usually means that someone has something so heavy to carry that they want somebody to help them carry it. They shared that they had passed at OUUC as a college-educated person, even though they never finished college, for a number of very common reasons. They were sad that they never felt that they could share what they thought might be seen as a lack, because they were afraid that they wouldn't fit in, that they wouldn't belong. What would it look like to openly welcome class diversity? Well, most faith traditions have a message of care for the poor, charity and service. The author of our reading, Gustavo Gutierrez, adds the element of justice with his liberation theology, which claims that God is always on the side of the poor with the poor in their suffering, and with the poor in their call for justice. Gutierrez claimed that people of faith are also called to be on the side of the poor, not only with charity and service to help them survive, but to help change the unjust systems that create and maintain poverty. This is echoed in the writing of Brian Stevenson in his book, Just Mercy. Stevenson writes, the true measure of our character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, the incarcerated, and the condemned. He declares that the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. People of faith find strength and grounding for their work of economic justice in the teaching of their tradition. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King drew on the teachings of Jesus to sustain his important work. Unitarian Universalists work for economic justice by drawing on the principle of the worth of all people and our shared values of inclusion, equity, pluralism, generosity, and interdependence. So what can we do? Well, like with any injustice, we can educate ourselves about class and classism. We can listen to those who live in poverty and experience classism. We can reflect on the stories that we have about class, our own story, and what our biases are. I hope you'll join me and Hundley and Tim Ransom in the forum at 12:15 on Classism 101 when we'll do some of that work together. And we can also identify ways to change our practices and our community in order to be inclusive and just, not only out there in the world, but in our hearts and in this community. For example, I so appreciate that over the years, the folks who organized the auction have been attentive to the fact that not everyone in the congregation is able to have the funds to participate in the auction. And in the last few years, Alicia and Jason Martinelli, who have led the auction, have been particularly attentive to this, continuing the work of making the auction fundraiser accessible to those who might be excluded because of lack of funds. And they've also figured out a way to do tickets at a pay-as-you-can level so that folks can give and participate and be part of the community in the ways that they're able. In addition, they've chosen an auction site that is owned by and supports local communities of color, the Osho Community Center. We're brainstorming ways to open the doors of this major community event even further. We can use our wealth and power to counter classism and work alongside those who have less in order to remove the barriers that we all know still exist. There is more that we can do, so let's explore the ways that we can be more inclusive and more just. To use an economic term, human rights are not a zero-sum game. My basic human rights do not take away from your basic human rights. The human rights of the poor do not take away from the human rights of those with more. Poverty is not an economic question. It's a moral question. There is enough for everyone. The heresy of universalism is a call for justice against any belief or system that challenges a person's worth. Everyone has the right to belong, to live with dignity and purpose, and to know that they are worthy. Everyone, always. May we use our hearts, our hands, and our power to help make this so. Let's take just a moment of silence together.
I invite you to rise in body and our spirit, and let's sing together our closing hymn out of the Teal hymn book, hymn number 1027, When the Poor Ones. Walking fields our dwellings. When the nations work to change war into peace, when the strangers are accepted as our neighbors, we see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way.
We extinguish our chalice with the words adapted from For Citizenship by John O'Donohue. We have become converts to the religion of stress and to the deity of progress. May we have the courage to turn aside from it all and come to kneel down before the poor, to discover what we must do, how to turn anxiety back into anger, how to find our way home. May you go with joy, go with commitment, go with love.